If you look at Porsche right now, you can see that the drastic change in the cost of the cars has dropped massively. There have been a lot of cars that are way cheaper than they should be. Luxury SUVs, electric vehicles, some sports cars. But if you look at the Porsche market, you can see there's been a huge change in the rift of the way the vehicles are sold. A lot of the cars are still great cars. Some of them are new, some of them are old, but we can see a massive dip and change in this market. In this video, I'm going to look into 5 vehicles that are way cheaper than you'd expect for Porsches. Let's take a look. Hope you enjoyed the video.
The Porsche market has shifted from an appreciating to a depreciating asset in the last year, and this is due to the used car market crash, but has also led to panic and selling from rock bottom prices. Also, on top of this, with a shortage of new cars, this has caused the cost of Porsches to increase in some cases, and other Porsches have declined due to global events. This has led to a bit of an oversupply of models and dropping prices. Obviously, the Taycan is going to be in this list, but this is just an example of how we've seen Porsches, cars that are luxury, still drop despite the market. There's only very few cars such as the 918 that have been able to survive something like this. It has to be a very special, rare one-off car. The first car on the Porsche list is definitely the Cayman models. The Cayman models are brilliant cars, but I'm going to start with the 718 Cayman, as this is a car that is fairly modern but has lost quite a bit of value in recent years. We already know that the older Caymans are now dipping below 10k, which by the way is a great price, but the 718 Cayman is really dipping because of recent car changes in the used car market. While this has been a really popular car for people who couldn't quite afford the 911 but wanted something a bit more than the Boxster, the 718 Cayman really fit in quite well there. At prices of around 50k to 60k when new, these have now dipped to some below 30k, which I would say is a pretty big steal. If you're looking for a GT4 Cayman, which is the track alternative version, these always held their prices at about 70, maybe over 80k. Well, it looks like in 2024, these cars are going to come down to about 6. That being said though, these cars are likely to go back up, and it's probably just for the foreseeable. 718 Cayman will be probably well liked by the car enthusiast, and if anyone is able to get hold of it, it is still a really good alternative. Essentially a GT3 version of the 911 in the 718 Cayman GT4.
One Porsche I'm particularly happy about is the GT4 Cayman, a car that has been holding a very good price and is probably likely to go back up at some point.
The Porsche Macan went on sale in 2014, 10 years ago, and it's no surprise these are definitely going to depreciate much like its older brother, the Cayenne. But the Porsche Macan, believe it or not, was Porsche's best-selling vehicle in 2022 and 3. This is a vehicle that has been really popular with the mid-size SUV range people. And as they are releasing a new version in 2024, it's no surprise again that this car has dipped massively. If you want a Porsche Macan, you could get a really rough one for only £15,000 now. It's easy to see why people want Porsche Macans. They're very small SUVs and a bit more affordable than a Cayenne, but they're also not getting a sports car. They're getting a sporty version of an SUV in a Porsche, and it's great. And if you really wanted to, you could get a Porsche Macan quite easily under 20k. Granted, a lot of them do have 100,000 miles, but this is just an example of a dip in the Porsche price, which has meant cars are fanatically cheap.
On reflection, Macans were bound to lose value given the fact that the new Macan has just released.
The next car is arguably the most expensive on this list, and it is a 911 992 GT3. Yes, it's not quite the 911 GT3 RS, which is incredibly hard to get hold of and does cost around £300,000 and is likely to go up in price over time. The 992 GT3 is the next step down from that, and it's equally an impressive track car. But would you believe that these cars have found a reduction of around £30,000 in the last year? Yes, it's still an expensive car at £150,000 to £160,000. It's just an example again of how much great cars from Porsche, which are pretty much brand new, are depreciating. I think anyone who loves Porsches is usually into the 911 GT3 or the RS. It still carries that 500 horsepower engine and a 4-litre flat 6. What I love about the GT3 though is that it is a lot more usable on the road than maybe you would see a GT3 RS. The prices of these are pretty insane, and it's a shame to see that these cars have dropped, but also equally great for car enthusiasts who can now get into the market a bit easier. That being said, if you are going to afford a Porsche at this price, it probably won't matter whether it's 20 or 50k. The previous 991 GT3 has now dipped below 100k, so that is another example of the GT3 always dropping in price. Here's some examples I found on Auto Trader, which you can go and check out yourself.
The GT3 has definitely lost value, even though it is still a stunning car. It just doesn't hold up to the price of the GT3 RS.
Now, there's no need to go into the Porsche Taycan too much, as everyone in the world knows that Taycan prices have dipped massively. But this is probably the most perfect example of what has happened to Porsche in the most recent months. From an RRP of 79 to 150k, these cars can now be found at £49,000. Wow. Yes, the under 50k mark is now a great place to get a Taycan, which is roughly the equivalent of about £700 a month on finance terms. Now, there's a few reasons why the Taycan did drop in price so massively, and this was due to, firstly, the leases ending. Every business that wanted to do luxury leased a Taycan, and of course, this meant a lot of them were on lease, and when they did finally end, prices weren't there to be held, and of course, they dropped back at the dealer. This did result in Auto Trader having around 660 to 700 at one point, which for clarity, there's only 100 GT86s as a car I own. That just puts it into perspective of how many Taycans are for sale right now. On top of that, the used car market for electric vehicles in the UK specifically did dip in 2023. And as a result, we saw the Taycan really drop because it couldn't have the affordability of that. It was an expensive luxury car that wasn't a priority for most people. And yes, much like the e-tron GT, the Taycan dropped insanely. And it is an incredible car to have. Predictions for this car could be in the £30,000 range in a few years. This is likely to not go back up either.
The Taycan took a massive dip last year, and we now see him below £50,000. It was probably no surprise it was going to be in this list.
Similar to the GT3 is the 911 992 Carrera. The new 911s, believe it or not, are driving a price of below 100k now. A lot of these adjusted for inflation back in the day when they were released in 2022 and 2021 were around 120 to 130k. You've got to remember this is sort of the downgraded version of the Turbo, which sits in the middle of the 992 GT3 and the 992 Carrera. The Carrera S is a very big car for the Porsche brand and probably one of their best-selling 911s. And the reason we've seen a dip in the 911 range is because they made quite a lot of 911s, and Porsche obviously know that this is going to be a popular car and send more out. Therefore, supply and demand means that this car is now worth less than maybe what it was. With the used car market crash as well, as I explained in previous videos, this is going to be a huge decrease for Porsche. Again, this is really good for someone who is wanting to buy a used Porsche at the moment because you are going to be able to get it on a fire sale price. For the money, you are still getting 440 horsepower with a 3-litre flat six this time. And I do think for around 70 to 80,000 pounds for pretty much 3-year-old Porsche, this is an incredible price. You've got to remember as well that the Porsche 911 is probably right now very iconic on social media. It's a car that everyone does love. I think the Porsche brand is almost hard to hate for a lot of people. And so to see these prices absolutely dip is crazy. For a fairly new 911, I would say this is very good value for money. Here are some Auto Trader prices, as you can see. And on Auto Trader Price Tracker, they have constantly gone down in 2023. Hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, don't forget to subscribe if you like the content.